Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to the part number 2. So in the past video, we did set up some of the stuff about the server and we was able to start it and we get a 4.4 when we run an API endpoint. Now it's going to be the time to install a package. We're going to make the server restart himself every time we save, because right now, example, if I create some new line, you see the server do not restart. I'm going to need to close it and after that restart the server to make it work. So that's why I did find this utility stuff here. So it just has like a CLI where you can start your project, and the way you install it, it's you run this command, go get github.com CodeGangstaGen, and after that we're gonna be able to start the project. And the way we're gonna start it after you install it, and I don't gonna make it because I have already, it's you can run it by running gen-p for 8080 -a 8081. And what are those commands? If you run help like that, you're gonna see then the the -a was for the port for the Go web server, and the -p was the port for the proxy. So they work with a proxy. So when you run this command I just show you, so gen port 8081. Now what happened is if I run this here, I'm gonna get nothing. But if I go back to 8080, now I'm gonna get my 44. So you see now still receive the 44, so he proxy on the 8080. So now if I do a change, now you see he rebuild himself. Now we can run it. So this thing is done for that. So now what do we want to do? It's to want to be able to register a user. So we're not gonna work yet with the database, but we're gonna do some because I mean the database is just something where we're gonna save it. We can build a logic without thinking about it right now. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start with the domain. So this is what I like to do. So first thing, I'm gonna create a file called domain. Like I say, I want to have the same file name as the package, and I'm gonna have a user domain, a user file inside my domain. And inside those, sorry, I'm gonna just put a S. I like to have those in plurals like that. And also I'm gonna have another file called out, because I think it's a user can register, but the registration is gonna be inside a package called out. I want to keep all the authentication like register, logging and stuff like that inside this. So what I'm gonna do now, it's I want to say I'm gonna start with what we need when we gonna register. Okay, what I do mean by that, it's the thing in Golang versus what we have in Node.js is the thing it's you need to build your JSON because I think it's JSON is JavaScript, it's a JavaScript object. So the thing it's now we need to kind of transpile this JSON to a Golang data type. And what we do, that's why we create a struct for that. And now for me, what I like to do, it's called my struct. We're gonna become just kind of a data object. We're gonna move around with the JSON. Register payload example for this case, it's gonna be a struct. And what I want, it's when you're gonna register, I want to have an email, and I'm gonna say it's a type of string. I'm gonna have a password, it's gonna be a string. I want to have a confirm password, it's gonna be a string. And also I want to have a username. So those things is the thing I want the user to enter when you're gonna try to register. But now the thing is I want those coming from the JSON stuff also. So here it's a utility. I think you can do this with almost all of the IDE you have, where you just say finally the JSON key is gonna be email, and now you're gonna become this, password is gonna become this. And for confirm password, I like camel case from the JavaScript side, so I'm gonna go like that. Okay, so here is the thing where I'm gonna want my registration to go inside that. Now after that, what I'm gonna do, it's I want to have a function inside my domain called register, and this thing is going to be all the business logic about the registration. So this function is going to be everything I need to register, and now my controller ish handler here going to just call this function. So my controller going to have almost no logic at all. Everything's going to be my domain. So if I want it later to transpose this application in GraphQL, it's going to be pretty simple, because my business logic is not tied to a controller who touch more the REST stuff. So what I'm going to do is, inside my domain here, I'm going to create a type called domain. It's going to be a struct. So this domain is going to be the struct where I'm going to put all the method my domain do have. Okay. So now if I go to my registration here, what I can do now is create my register method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a domain where it's going to be a method where I'm going to register, and I'm going to receive a payload which is going to be a register payload. And my plan now here is to return a pointer to a user and an error. Now why Golang here don't like it, it's because I don't have a type user. So I'm gonna create this type user here inside my user Go. So it's gonna be a struct. We're gonna fill it in no time. So now it's where we need to do some kind of logic. Okay. So coming from Node.js, we use Passport and stuff like that, where you do kind of stuff. But if you remember, in Passport, you need to do some kind of logic also, like, hey, do this email was already used. Passport don't gonna tell you, hey, he was not, and stuff like that. Passport was just doing the authentication part. So we need to still doing this kind of logic, okay? But how can we receive a database connection in this method here when the database connection was built in the main? And as you know, what I did told you yesterday is the fact that you cannot import package inside another package will also import this one. You're gonna get circular dependency. So that's kind of why what you kind of do is you inject dependency. So what I do mean by that, it's my domain here. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a type DB struct. It's gonna be my database struct, and my domain gonna have a DB. I know I can have called it just with one, but you're gonna see why I do this later. But you see, so my domain now gonna receive a DB, but this DB right now is nothing, it's just an empty struct. So what I want to do now, so keep in mind, you should have some knowledge about Golang, so that it's not gonna be maybe easy to understand. But what I want to do, it's here inside this domain, it's where I'm gonna create my interface of the thing I need to receive. I need my application to kind of follow. And what I do mean by that, it's my Postgres database here gonna need to follow some repository I'm gonna create, some interface, and they need to follow this signature if they want to accept this kind of contract interface. So what I do mean by that, it's here I'm gonna create a user repo. So for user repository, it's gonna be an interface. This DB struct here gonna receive a user repo. It's gonna be a user repo. And now here you're gonna have some function where I want my Postgres to follow the signature. And one of them is gonna be get by email. So I want the user repo interface to have a function called get by email. We're gonna receive an email who's gonna be a string. And this thing gonna return a pointer to a user or an error here. And now just by doing this, even if I don't do the Postgres code, I can jump to my out. I can go right there. And now what I can do is do some kind of logic where I'm gonna say if user exists, no error, where I have my D because of the domain here. Now I have access to my DB, where I have access to my user repo. And now I can have my function get by email. And now if I want to receive my email, I can just call this from the payload, where I have access to my email with a string. Now here, it's my logic about, okay, do this email already exist? So if this function return a user, that means a user already exists with this email. So now what I can do is if user exists is not nil. So if the pointer is not nil, I'm gonna return nil for the user. I don't want to return this user, but now I want to return an error for that. And what I like to do with my error is inside my model, I create a file called errors, and where I'm gonna create some error. So I'm gonna have a var here, where I'm gonna say error user with email already exists. It's gonna be a type of error that new, where you can pass a text, and I'm gonna say user with email already exists, like that. And now what I can do is just returning this error type like that. Okay, so we did one thing, it's we did check, okay, do a user with this email already exists? If not, I'm stopping the logic right there. Now I'm gonna say if a user exists, and this is now from my DB user repo, and I would like a function called get by username. So the same pattern as the one here. And I'm gonna pass a payload where I'm gonna pass the username. Now I'm gonna create this method. So it's just a quick stuff I did with the Golang is I did option enter, and now that pushed me to this user interface, and that just create whatever I need. And what I need is a get by username function where you take a username, a string, return a user, and return an error also, like that. So now this function, and as you can see, I didn't initialize this variable because user already is being initialized here, so that's why I just use equal. And now that's going to be the same pattern. But now the thing is here that's going to be user name already exists. So error user with username already exists. I'm jumping here, copy paste that with Command D, and now I can see the same user with username already exists. Perfect. Now here I do have my logic about, I know here if I go further than this one, that means the email is unique, so no one else has that. Same pattern here. So now if I go further, now I would like to hash the password, because as you know, we don't want to save a password as a plain text object, plain text string inside the database. So what we do is that's why I'm gonna need to hash the password. And the way I'm gonna do this is I want to create a function who is just gonna be about set the password. Okay, so I'm gonna have a function called d.set password. We're gonna take here my payload.password, and this function I'm gonna create it like that. This function gonna be, sorry, I don't want it there, I want it in my out. This function gonna receive a password, gonna return here a pointer to a string, and also can return an error like that. You see, right now, that's the thing I like about Golang and stuff like that. It's I can just create my stuff. I know those signatures are gonna give me the thing I need, and after that I can care about the logic later. So for now, I can receive nil just to stopping the error from here. Now what I can do from that, it's now I know when I'm gonna receive a password, I'm gonna check if the error is nil. If the error is not nil, sorry, I'm gonna return the error like that. And after that, now I can start creating my user object and thinking about saving this inside the database. So the way I'm gonna work with that is I'm gonna create a user struct, but now the user struct take nothing. So we already know some stuff this user can take now with everything we've done. So we know because it's gonna be from Postgres, we're gonna use the auto increment ID. So that's why we're gonna have an ID, and that's gonna be an int64, and the JSON is gonna be an ID. And now why I do put the JSON tag is because when we're gonna marshal this thing to push it back to the REST API to the front end, we want this ID to become ID like that. Now same with username, is gonna be a string like that. After that, email is going to be a string, and it's going to be email. Now password is going to be a string. But now look what I'm going to do with the JSON. I never ever want to push the password to the front end. So what I can do is I'm going to put here this thing in English, you say dash. So that means don't marshal this thing. Okay, and now some stuff we always kind of want inside a database. It's we want some stuff called created at, where it's going to be a kind of a timestamp. So I want that to be a type of time, and the JSON is going to be created at, and yeah, like that. And I'm going to do the same, but now for update, like that. So updated at. Why do I put those more at the bottom? It's just because for me, I know this thing it's going to be always there for almost any entity, and later we're going to put that in his own struct. Okay, so now by having built this thing, what I can do is now I can create my user from here. So now I can say username is going to be equal to the payload.username. I can say the email is going to be equal to the payload.email. And for the password, it's going to be equal to the password pointer we just create here. But I think it's now, if you see, first thing you always need to put a comma here, but now what happened, it's cannot use a password type pointer to a string as a string. So now what you need to do, it's putting the pointer, so you want to receive the value and not just the address here. Perfect. So now I've created my data object where I want to push this to my repo. So now what I can do is I want my repo to return the user who's going to be create. And this repo is going to have a function called create, where now I can pass a data. We're going to finish the function here, and after that we're going to create it. So we're going to say if error is not nil, return nil and error. Later we're going to make it much better. And else we return the user in nil. The thing is, this create is not create already, so I'm going to create the method. So they push this create to my interface, where now I'm going to receive a data which is going to be a pointer to a user, and I don't want that to be called data. I'm going to call that, I'm going to call that data. I want this to return a pointer to a user, and also I want that to return an error like this. Okay, yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but you see the registration, it's done now. The logic about what we want for the registration is done. Now the thing, it's all this user repo stuff do nothing right now. They return nothing because no struct in this project have the contract of this interface. So that's why we're gonna jump on that right now. So what I do mean by that is inside this Postgres, I'm going to create a new Go file. I'm going to call that user. Here I'm going to create a user repo struct. And now you ask, how are we going to be able to inject a database and be able to use it? That's why I'm going to inject the database connection inside this user repo when I'm going to initialize that. So here I'm going to receive a DB who's going to be a pg.db who came from GoPG. Now I'm gonna, just because I want to make it faster, I'm gonna create a constructor who's gonna be called new user repo. We're gonna receive this DB object and gonna just return a brand new pointer to a user repo. Nothing crazy. But now, okay, now it's gonna be some magic because I have Golang here, but I think you can do the same with VS Code. I'm not quite sure, but you can say, hey, I'm gonna say implement interface. I'm gonna search my interface, and now I implement that, okay? And by implement this, what that means is I just create all the function with all the signature already built for me with the panic. You don't need to do this, but the reason why I do this thing, sorry, I'm gonna redo this, user repo, and now I can say it like that, and I want the pointer. And why you do this is because now you see here, I have this arrow right there who say now I follow an interface and I follow this user repo interface, because those three functions who is need to make sure I follow this interface are now create for this user repo struct. So now this is why we're gonna do the logic about getting a user by email, and we're gonna do almost the same for the user by username. So because I want to return a pointer, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make use of the new type, who as you can see return a pointer to a certain type, and I'm gonna want a domain.user. And you see I already have imported the domain just because of the creation of the interface. By Golang they did it. Now here we're gonna have maybe an error who came from the DB, and now the DB, as you can see, it's now the GoPG stuff, and inside the GoPG stuff you have something called a model who can take any kind of interface, and that's why we pass the user now. And now we can use some SQL stuff where I'm gonna have a where condition where I'm gonna say email equal, now I can say interrogation point, because now I can say, hey, I want this interrogation point to be equal to the email I have passed here. So the function here is a SQL query where I'm gonna say, hey, select all from user where email equal this email I just give you, and I want the first one. So that means I'm gonna have just one item. Now I can do if error, but now the thing is, I would like to receive an error when I have no result. Okay, what I do mean by that, it's I want to know if the error is because the SQL query was good but no item was there. And how you can do this, it's now with Go, I think it's Go 13, you can have this error is. So this error is, it's a function finally who check if the error match the target, and it return you a boolean if this is the error you search. And the way you pass it, it's you pass the error, and I'm gonna say PG. So this Go PG have an error called no rows, and the no rows mean no result. So now here what I can do is I can return nil when I have that, and now here I want to return an error. I'm gonna create it where this error gonna be called no result. So I'm gonna pass it there. I'm gonna say error no result, and that's gonna be a new error where I'm gonna say no result. That's it. So now here I can pass this one, and now me in my domain logic and whatever, I can use this kind of logic and see if that works. You see what we've done here was with checking this user exists. We can have done if the error equal the one I just created, but I like to go this way here. So now here my user, one sec, my user, now I want to make sure here I still return nil and the error if the error do not match this, and this error gonna become an error caused by myself because of that. And now here I'm gonna end that by returning the user and nil. Copy and paste some logic. We can refactor that later, but we can just do the same logic with the username. Same pattern. Now the thing is, I want to be able to create also a user. How can we deal with that? So the way that's gonna work is I'm gonna create a user, and the way you work with this is you do almost the same pattern. Okay, I know. I'm gonna change inside my domain here. I want this create to become a user, and I'm gonna change that to become a user, and just because I want to pass it like that. Here I want to say return everything. So it's the equivalent of just saying, hey, after you create, you can say returning. And finally, I want to insert. The insert here return you like a result in an error, but the thing is, because here it's like the pointer, they're gonna fill this thing when they're gonna returning. So now I can do my awesome logic of if error is nil, if not nil, I can like that, and finally return nil. So now the logic is done for those things with the database. Now the thing is, how can we all plug that together? Because if you see, this user repo is never used, and yeah, it's become pretty a mess right now. So what we can do, it's inside the main, right there. What I want to do, it's I want to create a domain object, okay? So I'm gonna create a domain DB variable. It's gonna be a domain.db, and if you remember, this one need to have something. We're gonna follow the contract of the user repo with this interface. And now what we can do for that is I can call from my Postgres package new user repo. And now this new user repo, they need to receive the DB. And this is the thing we did create yesterday. So this DB right there. And now you see Golang don't create anymore because we have now the user repo who follow this interface. Now I want my domain to receive this DB we just create right there. Because remember, again, this domain receive a DB struct, and the DB struct is the one with the user repo. Okay, and now I think I'm gonna just run the formatter. Okay, perfect. And now the thing is, how are we gonna be able to play with all of this with the routing stuff we have? So now here we have the domain with everything inside that. The domain have access to the DB, and the DB inside that you have the user repo, and you have also the domain stuff. So what I can do now is pass this D to this setup router. This setup router was the function we did create yesterday. Now here we're gonna receive a domain, who's gonna be a domain object pointer. And now what I can do is pass it to this server. Now this server gonna receive the domain here. And I'm gonna pass it right there. Domain. And the only thing I need now, it's passing here. I want to receive that domain. It's gonna be a pointer to the domain object like that. So now why we have done all of this, it's because now when we're gonna create a route, we're gonna have access to all of this. And just to show you how that's gonna work, it's now inside my handler. I'm gonna create a new user handler. And here, I'm gonna create a method for my server called register user. It's gonna be an handler func. We're gonna return I'm gonna keep it like that for now. No, yeah, I'm gonna create it already. Well, I'm gonna have my response writer, my request pointer, and now here, if you type the S, you have access to the domain, and now boom, I have my register payload. So if my register user here receive the register payload, he can pass it to this register. And now what that means, it's I'm gonna be able to have the user from this thing like that. So this is what we're gonna do in the next video, because I think now it's become pretty long, but I just want to make sure you follow what we've done, okay? Because it's pretty big what we've done. So we have created a domain object. The domain struct here have a DB struct. The DB struct want an interface user repo, and by interface that means we want whatever we can receive who follow this contract. This contract was 3 functions I need to make the user repo working. So that was get by email, get by username, and create. Those functions was used inside my out, inside my register. And as you can see, those things, I was able to create that without making the logic working yet, because Golang already know then whatever I'm gonna use to do this get by email, that's gonna always take an email string and return a user pointer and an error. Same for the get by username. For the set password, that's the thing we're gonna do in the next video, where we're gonna use bcrypt and be able to crypt this password. We did create a data struct here, pointer, where now we can pass it to the user repo create, who was again a function inside the interface. And what we have done is we have followed this interface by creating a struct called user repo, who receive the database pointer. And now we create those three functions who follow the interface user repo. So now, because of this, we can use this new user repo as the user repo, because that follow the interface. I know when I came to Golang, that was kind of crazy, because I didn't make any kind of stuff with an interface a lot before. I mean, I've done some in TypeScript and things like that, but that was not as crazy like that, because the thing is, in Golang you need to work with the circular dependency. So yeah, so now if you follow what happened, it's really the fact that when the server starts, we have this domain DB, so it's everything about we're gonna touch this Postgres stuff. We're gonna be passed to a domain object, and this domain object now is gonna be accessible to the router. And now the router, the server router, and now all this thing gonna make our handler having access to whatever we have. You see here, my domain, I have access to my DB and my user repo. But the thing is, I didn't want to make this logic inside the controller here, because I want to make sure that if later I want to have something called GraphQL, something like that, I can create a new package called GraphQL and use those same function. So that's why I did create my register alone. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that was hard, but you're gonna see more and more we're gonna work with Go in this tutorial. More and more that's gonna start to make sense, and you're gonna see how after some time that's gonna become easier, and that's gonna be easier again to just refactor and things like that. So I hope you enjoy, and we talk in the next one. Bye everyone.